Okay, so this is going to be the first video of kind of a long series, I guess. What we're going to do is what we did in class, and that is to create some custom brushes. So let's launch Photoshop, which is right here, and let's create a document that we can work with. So new, and I'm going to move away from the default Photoshop size. I'll go to US paper. And just for giggle's sake, I'm going to set this to 11 inches. Notice that this is 11 inches, not pixels, and 300 pixels per inch. That's high quality. Click OK. Give it a second here, and there we go. New document. So, brush tool, and we've got a bunch of brushes here. And I like to start off with the 3 blades of grass. And let's close that up. And now I think it's just too small for this document. Now 134 seems pretty large for pixels, but compared to the size of this document, it's actually pretty small. So let's see if I can scale this up a bit. There we go. And let's see. Even that's a little bit large. I'll undo this. There we go. Now we can see the brush. Okay, so that's about 400, and that's pretty cool. So this is the standard 3 blades of grass. And you'll notice that, as I click and drag, that there are several things happening to the brush that you wouldn't get with a typical circular brush or even a grungy shaped brush. So you can see that each of the brush strokes is rotating in different directions. You'll see that there's a different value somewhere between black and white, and you'll see that the scale is changing this stuff. So we're getting some nice variety, and this is randomness. Okay, and this is the way this particular brush, which is the 3 blades of grass, is built by default. So let's talk about how to change some of these things. Now, we're going to do this kind of backwards by going into the brush panel, which is this one. Get used to F5, that's how you get here. And this one actually opens both brush and brush presets. So I'll hit on brush, and you can see that all the brush shapes are here that you would also find over here. And there are some other things going on here. There is shape dynamics, scattering, color dynamics. I never use transfer. I don't even know what it is. And smoothing. Sometimes I'll use that. So in order to kind of get us back to ground level, well, let's see what this can do first. How about that? We'll do another brush. Let's see. The way this brush works is we use shape dynamics. The size jitter, by the way, anytime you see the word jitter, that means randomize. So size randomization, okay? So that's why we get some varying sizes there. We've got an angle jitter, which means it'll rotate up to 10% every time it lays down a new mark. And it will do a roundness jitter, which means it will rotate on the x-axis. So if you can see, if you put your finger up in front of your face and point it to the left and right, and then rotate it as though it was a chicken on a spit, then that's kind of the way you would rotate on the roundness jitter. These are terrible names. I mean, this should be, size jitter, okay, jitter stinks, but angle could be Z rotation, and this should be X rotation. But, they don't make this easy for us. Anyway, so that's what the shape dynamics does. Then scattering kind of gives you a randoming of how these things lay out. The other thing is color dynamics. Now this is, to me, the most interesting one here, because we've got a foreground, background jitter, and we've got a hue jitter. Now I'll get more into this in a bit, but right now the important thing here is this one. And it basically means that whenever it lays down a new brush stroke, it randomizes the value between the foreground, which is black, and the background, which is white. So you get varying shades of gray, and some blacks and whites as well. So if I were to change this to something that looks like dune grass, which is what this is. Okay, let me clean this up actually. There we go. Now I get values between green and white. Okay, and if I set this one to be perhaps another kind of value, maybe a little bit warmer, because some grass does look kind of that tone, then we start to mix it up a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit too yellow. Let's push this a little bit more yellow, and there we go. Now when we do this, it feels more like grass that's growing up, right? So the randomization factor is pretty cool. Let's move on to the next brush. Well, now it seems like a good time as any to show you a different way of cleaning off our screen here. Typically up to now we've probably been doing a lot of Command Delete or Command Backspace, but notice what happens. We've got a yellow background chip over here, and if we hit Command Delete now, it actually is going to fill that. Hello. It's not working. Why is it not working? There. Hit Command Delete this time, and it fills with the background color chip, which is not what we want. I want a white background. So I'm going to go up to this guy over here. It's called Fill. Notice the keyboard shortcut is Shift F5. And I'm going to set the menu here to white, and then hit OK. And now it's filled with white. Excuse me. So we're going to take the next brush in the series, which is, let's see, it's the Maple Leaf, which is this one here. And if you notice over here in the preview window in the brush panel, wow, there's a lot of leaves there that are kind of just all over the place, which is kind of cool. But we're really going to dial this back into just a brush that we can make. Now, notice that it's got all these settings on here. We're going to go through here and deconstruct that, okay? So let's click on Shape Dynamics, and let's start off by turning all of this stuff to 0. Now, if you're using a Wacom tablet or some sort of tablet, you probably want to set these to off as well. I do not have my tablet in here right now, so that's not a problem for me. So not only am I going to set all that stuff to 0 with the Shape Dynamics, I'm going to turn that off. And you may have noticed that when you click on the word, that will actually change the control panel that's over here. So another case of, let's crank that down to 0, and crank the count down, and the count jitter, we'll talk about that stuff in a minute, and turn that off. We're going to leave transfer off and smoothing off to begin with. And then when we click on Color Dynamics, we will set that to, that'll be 0, 0, it's all zeros over here. Okay, so it's all gravy. Turn that off, and now we're almost ready to start. We're going to click on the brush tip shape, and there's a few settings here. Now the first thing I'm going to set up, I mean, notice what happens here. When I click and drag, well, that's a very small brush actually. Let's crank that up a bit. When I click and drag, it looks like what's over here in the preview. And that's neat and everything, but we're going to space this out a little bit more. So I'm going to hit Command-Z to undo that mess. And we're going to use this slider here to space this grouping of leaves out. So I would say anywhere between about 90 and about 100. So yeah, that's good right there. Okay, so now when you click and drag, you get a kind of a nice spacing. Of course, it looks very static and boring. Okay, so that's not too cool. Now, I'm going to switch this back to black and white for the moment. So now we've got this spaced out, and we can do some things here. Now, obviously, you can change the size of your brush, but that's more affected over here in the canvas. But you can do a flip X, and this you probably won't see a whole lot of difference. And it changes the shape down here. So the little dancing leaves, right? If I flip this with the Y, it goes upside down. But see, we really won't need this stuff because we're going to change a lot of the settings over here to make these kind of changes kind of pointless. The other thing is you can rotate. You can do that kind of a thing. And you can also click on the small circle that's in there and flatten out the rotation, so you can make flat leaves. Again, the changes that we're going to make over here will really kind of make this stuff pointless. So I'll just set this back to 100%. And now we're really ready to start playing with the shape dynamics and so forth. So click on the words Shape Dynamics, which does bring up the control panel, but when you do click on the words, it will turn the checkbox on. Okay, so first things first, and that is the size jitter. For this brush, I'm going to crank this up to the max, which is 100%. And you get some nice variety. You get some small versions there, you get some large versions. If you didn't want quite the discrepancy between leaves, you could ease this off, maybe around 50%. It's still a size change, but it's not that big a deal. Okay. Now, for our purposes right here, I'm just going to crank this sucker up. Okay. Now that is size jitter, and like I mentioned before, jitter means randomize. And look what it says there at the tooltip: set the size randomness. Okay. We're going to go to angle jitter, and watch what happens down here in the preview when you crank this up. It rotates it around the z-axis. Okay. Imagine a pencil sticking out of your face, and this is what's happening. The leaves are rotating around that pencil. Okay. So again, I want the maximum amount of randomness, and then there's roundness jitter, and this is the one where the leaves are going to look a little bit flatter. Imagine, you're holding a pencil up to your face from left to right, and you're rotating that pencil, rolling it, so to speak, and it flattens these guys out. Now, it may not be quite as obvious, but it does a pretty good job. Now, if I leave that to the max, look what happens. We get some leaves that are just rotating in crazy directions and changing size. Pretty cool, right? So I'm going to undo that, Command Z. So that's a good start. Now you can do other things like flip, Y, jitter. It's pretty pointless. Don't even bother with that stuff. Okay? Let's go to scattering. Okay? Now let's start off with the count. Okay, now I'm just going to do a click and drag across like this. Now you'll notice that what's really happening, as I click across, something like this, leaves are being laid down at about a rate of about every quarter of a second. Okay? And what's happening is it's dropping 1. That's the count. Okay? Feasibly, we could crank this up to about 16. And look what happens over here. It looks very bushy. Looks like some crazy eyebrows, right? And it drops about 16 every quarter of a second. Actually, it should be exactly 16. Okay? Which is a bit much, actually. I tend to go anywhere between, on this particular brush, anywhere between 4 and 5. So I'll leave it at 5. And that gives you some randomness. It's, about 5. But we want some more randomness. So here we're going to use the count jitter. Again, that's randomization. So let's crank this up to 100%. Now, it's going to drop 5 of these leaves plus or minus 100%. So we could lay down up to 10, or we could lay down as few as 0 every quarter of a second. So we get a little bit more randomness, and that's good. Okay, I'm going to clean up my screen here, Shift F5, and white is already in place. I just have to click OK. Cool. The last thing I'm going to play here is the scatter. Now, watch the preview, and you can see how this works. I'm going to crank this up to about 500%, and look what happens. We go from this line to, it gets completely wacky. It's like it's blowing up almost. It's exploding, right? So now you can completely go nuts and go to 1,000%, which I think is overkill. So I'll drop this at about 500, now 495, close enough. Now when I click and drag, wow, it starts to look like a blustery day, right? Pretty zippy. Notice that it actually, it's kept drawing after my mouse came up, okay? And the reason for that is now we're starting to make kind of a complicated brush. And so the computer's having a little bit of a hard time keeping up with the number of things it has to do. Now, it also is slowing down because I'm capturing this video as I'm talking to you. So that's another process that's being slowed down. But anyway, now we're pretty much set up to move on to the next area, which is color dynamics. Okay, now, yeah, we got this all set to 0. And for our purposes, okay, again, I'll do Shift F5 and clean up. There we go. I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. What I want to do is I'm going to crank this all the way up so that I get values anywhere between black and white. So some sort of grayscale will happen. Okay, so we're just changing the one thing. And there it goes. And look at this. You're getting all kinds of interesting values happening now. Pretty zippy. Well, the problem is, I mean, that's great if you were making perhaps a black and white scene, or some sort of grayscale scene. We want to open this up to color. Now, I'm going to set up some colors here. So we'll do like some fall reds, some very deep reds, and randomize to something maybe a little bit orangey, something like this. And now when we click and drag, we get some very fall colors. Pretty neat, right? And it's randomizing between that deep red and the lighter orange. Great start. Let's take this a little bit further. So again, I'll hit Command-Z, undo. And now I play with the hue jitter. Now, on this brush, because the fall colors tend to be very, well, limited. We're not going to use the entire spectrum of color. Okay, I would say anywhere 10 to 20% is pretty safe. Even 17 is perhaps a little bit high. Let's see. And look what happens. We're getting a little bit more variety. It's not strictly just the orange-red spectrum. We're starting to get a little bit more into kind of a greenish yellow in some of those cases, a little bit of a brown. Let's open this up to maybe 20%. Undo. And it's going a little bit farther. It's pretty cool. Now, just an example, I'll show you what 100% looks like. So hue jitter to 100, and you're going to get a lot of unnatural colors for leaves. It's fun, there's no doubt about that, it's fun. But of course, these deep purples and violets and blues really don't make for convincing fall leaves. So that's why we limit how many variations from our foreground and background color chips will work. So this is a good range right there. So I'll undo this and do another little sample. It looks pretty nice. But these leaves look a little bit well, unreal. They need to be weathered and beat up a little bit. Okay, so let's give some randomness to the lightness or brightness. So I'll undo this and crank up the brightness jitter. Now I'm going to crank this up to 100% and see what we get. And now we've got some more colors. We've definitely got some darks and blacks. I mean, imagine some leaves that have been sitting on the ground. It's November and they're decaying in the sun, even though it might be dry. And then there's some of these might have turned pink. That might be a little unrealistic. We may need to crank back on the hue jitter just a little bit. Maybe down to 15%. Let's take another stab at this. Where did that come from? Okay, I'm starting to believe these leaves a little bit more. Okay, so that's nice. Now let's worry about the intensity. And as I explained in class, we've got two things that really worry. I mean, I've told you before, saturation really means intensity. But in this particular situation, purity also has something to do with it. Okay, in fact, I think the purity slider acts more in accordance with what we've come to expect as saturation. Okay, so let's crank this up and see what happens. There we go. And the colors become quite a bit more intense. Okay, let's bring this down a bit. And the leaves start to feel as though they're decaying. They're kind of losing their color. Let's take that farther. Minus 62%. Okay, they feel a little bit more pastel, a little bit later in the season, maybe approaching winter. And then, of course, if we remove the purity altogether, it's just going to be back to grayscale. So we don't want to go quite that far. Let's drop that about minus 50%, roughly, and see what that looks like. Not bad, maybe a little bit less. Okay, feels nice. Now there's some pinks. I think some leaves will turn pink. And I treat the saturation jitter more as a volume knob, so to speak. So let's crank this up in terms of color, see if we get much difference. Seems like we're getting a few darker, a few bit more dark leaves. Let's try that one more time. Yeah, a few dark ones. So let's leave this like this. And basically, I mean, you know, the origin are these over here, but, you know, you could fill up the entire scene and make, you know, the kind of leaf pile that you might want to jump into. Notice how the screen is taking a while to catch up with my brush. Again, that's just a matter of the processing speed and the fact that I'm creating a video while I'm doing this. And I think that's enough. I think you get the point. Oh, it's going to take a while. Watch that. Okay. Next movie.